Well, ladies and gentlemen, listeners to Out of the Main, this is a day more than 40 years in the making.
Whoa.
And I am your co host today, Tom Nixon, because there is only room for one host in the podcasting studio today because I have two guests, which I will bring on one by one shortly. Maybe,
Hey.
John, I'll start with you since you're familiar around here.
Yeah.
I was thinking today just about all of the things that had to happen to make today a reality. Starting way back in 1978, a record
Right.
is made. Some 40 years forward from there, you and I, a couple knuckleheads, decide we're going to start a podcast about yacht rock.
Mhm.
And somewhere in part because we discover artists like Dane Donohue and Mark Jordan and Bill Labaudy, all this stuff that we really didn't know existed. And we're like, the world needs to know about this.
Correct.
And
So
then some, yes, correct so far. All right, well, get the flag ready. Somewhere along the lines, Keith Barry, a reporter, writer with Narratively magazine, it's an online publication, does a story called The Lost Prince of Yacht Rock, all about today's guests. We reach out to him. He comes on the podcast. He brings Dane with him on the podcast.
Right.
A couple days later, you're getting a phone call from Dane, who I guess stumbles on page 99 and says, aha, that may be the sound that I've been looking for my follow-up to the Dane Donohue debut album. And here we are today. It's out.
And that's very close. The one missing part of that was that when we had Dane on, I mentioned to him that one of the songs that I had on my album was sort of inspired by one of the songs from his album. And he said, hey, send it to me. I'd like to hear it.
That's
So
right.
what I sent him, and he's like, oh, hey, this is kind of what I've been looking for.
Yeah, well, let's find out if you're correct about that.
All right.
We can. I just wanted to read. I was going back and looking at the Keith Barry article, and it's got a headline, "The Lost Prince of Yacht Rock." Like I said, the subhead says in 1978 he was music's next big thing. Will Dane Donohue finally get his encore? Dane, welcome to your encore, and welcome back to Out of the Main.
Woo.
Hey, thank you so much, man. Good to see you guys. This is where it all started.
Yeah.
You're very correct in your lead and intro to all this. It was, and all the rest just sort of magically just fell into place. It was really nice. And
Yeah.
a smooth transition.
Uh-huh.
Well, this is really an exciting day. So your new album is out. I can't believe I'm get the one that gets to say that, but it's called LA Dreams, right? LA Rainbow. LA Rainbow is out. Like I said, it's like more than 40 years after the first record. So before we get into LA Rainbow, I wanted to remind listeners that we have interviewed you twice on this podcast, once with Keith Barry, like I mentioned. We went through what it was your remarkable story starting before 1978, leading up to present day. So we're going to link to that in the show notes so people can check it out. We had you back for a second interview. We got some more of the details. We got a sneak preview that this project was happening, and I'll link to that in the show notes. But gentlemen, before we get to this one, just real quickly, Dane, we want to focus on this new record, but 1978, you get signed to a major deal, you record a record, and it doesn't last that long in the limelight, and you walk away from the record business at that point?
Yes, pretty much. I absolutely, I've said this repeatedly that I love the music, just love music, but always hated the business aspect of it. And there were a lot of things that happened to where, it's like everything else that makes the world go around with politics, that things just didn't happen. There was a lot of effort went into it, and I just didn't want to go through it again. And it would have been nearly impossible to go through it again with, the players that were involved, the back support, the studio, the cost, and all that. So it was, I just walked away from it and really didn't have an interest in doing it again because I knew that the bar was set to a point to where it would be just nearly impossible monetarily. And like I said, with the backup players, it would just have been impossible to do until I met John.
I was only 13 back in 1978. So I was not quite seasoned yet.
Here we go. Yeah.
So Dave, what was it about the page 99 sound that you heard and that you said, well, this might be the answer? And is that in part what inspired this project to finally kind of coming to fruition?
It was where I left off. And you mentioned 40 some years. Actually, the first album was released on August 22nd, And this new record was scheduled originally to be released August 21st, which would have been one day shy of 46 years.
Wow.
But to answer your question, absolutely yes. When I heard page 99, I thought this sounds like where I left off. I mean, this sounds. I mean, not to mean that in
Right.
a bad way, in the greatest way possible. I thought that this could I possibly get back there through this vehicle, and as luck would have it, and it did. We did. The combination of people in page 99 is just amazing, and so we worked at it and stayed at it, and we've got something that I think sounds as good, and if not better, in some cases than the first album.
Wow. John, that's got to be really flattering because I remember when you set out to make that first page 99 record, your whole goal was, I want this to sound like it came out of 1978, 79, wasn't it?
Right. Not that I'm imitating 1978. I wanted it to sound like it came from there. You know what I mean? The difference is I wasn't just going to use a few of the tricks or a few of the nuances of 1978. My entire process, other than not having a tape machine, a 24-track tape machine, everything else about my process was done the way that they did it back then. Going back to the Jay Clark interview when he was opening up the Christopher Cross album and basically said it's all there on the tape already. That's the way I recorded stuff. So it was there. The sound was there. I mean, that's the way we did things back then.
Yeah. Well, not you, because you were 13, but
No, but I learned off them when I was in the 80s. We were studying that style.
True. Well, here we are in the year 2024, I think it is. Yeah. And LA Rainbow is out. Because I know a guy, have had a sneak preview of this record. And I swear to God, John, you can back me up. I would say this even if Dane wasn't here, because I did say it when Dane wasn't here. I freaking love this album. I think it is almost as good, maybe better in parts than the first one, and maybe sounds better. So tell us about this project. Maybe we start with the material, right? Because is all of this written recently, or is some of this left over from the interim between 78 and today?
Well, the songs, the majority of it was written recently, within the last couple of years. And there's actually one on there, cover song on there, page 99, but there's also a co-write that John and I had on this album, which is actually the first single coming out, which the official release date is actually September 4, coming up here in a couple of weeks. So it should be released worldwide at that time. And the first single will be High Life Dream, which is actually a co-write of John and I with another guy, Kenjamin Franklin. And we're really excited about that because I had watched, speaking of yacht rock, was watching this fabulous second arrangement recording of all of these Nashville stars and Hollywood stars. And I was just amazed at the guitar playing and the singing of Uli Bohr on there. And I'm thinking, why isn't he playing lead solo on all this? He's playing all this fabulous guitar parts. And I was just sort of, it kind of took me back to the Larry Carlton, Jay Graydon days. I was thinking, wow, I wish we were just in the network, with the Boylan Dynasty or whatever, they could pick up the phone and call someone like this. But it'd sure be nice to, and I happened to mention that to John. And I said, it sure be nice to have this guy. And lo and behold, he's on a podcast out of the Maine, and I'm going, you've got to be kidding me. Are you serious? He said, yeah, you want me to email him? I said, absolutely. And that's what happened. And shortly thereafter, Uli had mentioned to John and I in an email that he would love to contribute. And so he did. He just went above and beyond with the parts that he played on two songs, actually. And so we're really excited about that. But there again, I was just amazing at the new dynasty, the Nixon brother dynasty. Well, I'm just saying it was just fabulous that you have this that John has, this network of what I like to call the Golden Address Book of people that are really, really amazing, like Russ Fitzpatrick, for example. Someone to me it's like a cross between uh, Richard Carpenter and Michael McDonald as far as
Oh,
doing
that's
five-part harmonies with nuances so close, like Michael described in his vocals in Peg. There's this guy contributing on our album LA Rainbow here. So it's been a wonderful experience to say the least.
yeah. In a wonderful outcome, which we're going to get into more of the songs in a minute. But since we started talking personnel, this is a yacht rock record, John. So why don't we walk through personnel? You mentioned Ula Bogrud plays lead guitar on High Life Dream, and what other tune?
Lonely Day in Paradise. He also, and that includes wire choir. So it's not just, hey, he ripped a solo. He also put in some wire choir bits, some rhythm guitars. Yeah.
Before we move on from Ula, because that was one of my notes in here. So that's the second track is Lonely Day in Paradise. And you just mentioned it, Dane. I felt like I was hearing Jay Graydon on the first track and Larry Carlton on the second track. I'm like, this is great. This is yacht rock.
Yeah,
and it's all the same cat.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that was actually the direction we gave him.
Oh,
we said, give us like a Lukather Graydon thing on the first one, and then more of a jazzy Larry Carlton thing. I mean, he just picked it up, and that what you hear on these two songs is 0 revisions from Ule. I mean, that's what he sent first time, and we were just blown away. And he also added keyboard parts, which I was going to get to as well. A couple little things, very small, but very effective. So he saw the song as a whole, not just as a way to show his wares,
Yeah, and maybe even take 0 in true yacht rock fashion.
He didn't say that, but it could be.
All right, who else we got? We mentioned Russ, great vocalist. Who else?
Well, Dwayne Harlick from Page 99. He often plays guitar and sings a lot of lead vocals for Page 99. He did a lot of guitar work in this one, and
amazing work. I mean, he's right up there, another unsung hero that's just unknown, but he's got the chops. Yeah. It's amazing.
We gave a little teaser of LA Rainbow last week. Remember how it started so kind of mellow, Eagles-ish, and then it was just bopping like the end of Casablanca at the end. So that was Dwayne.
Oh, was it? Well, in case anyone missed that, let's jump ahead to the end of track 6. That sounds like, it's just reminiscent of the ending of Casablanca, if you will. Yep. Smoking. You didn't up the tempo though, did you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Song starts around like 122 and finishes at like 128, but you don't know it. So it's very natural progression. What else we got there? Well, we have, let me think here. I've got the list here in front of me, but I hate to look away. But Bill Salisbury, who's played bass for Page 99, played on a few of these. Dane has a few friends that played on it as well. So maybe we want to. Did Colton play on this album? Yes, he did. That's right.
Did, yeah.
Yep. Oh, yeah. He was the sort of, what would you call it? Like 40s jazz on Let It Go. I mean, the hollow body sound was just amazing. The classic sound. Wes Montgomery, I think, maybe is what I'm thinking of. But from your end,
wait, Dane? Let's give Colton his due. Colton Weatherford, is it?
Weatherston, come on.
Weatherston, yeah. See, well, that's what Dane said. They're unknown cats. I should know that by now. I've only talked about 10 times. But anyway,
what are we gonna play?
Well, let's give him that hollow body Wes Montgomery vibe at the end. All right, and then what other cats, Dane? You brought some.
Well, we had a fabulous pianist, Garland McCruder. And he's just he was a director of the Greater St. John Church, and they called him Maestro. In fact, that's on his email. And then we had Jeffrey Boyd played flugelhorn on that also, and then that song was co-written by another local person from my area in Ohio, Diana Lynn White. And then the other local musician that we had that did not play on that track, but played on Chinatown and several other songs was Jumpin' Ed Johnnet, played saxophone. Jumpin' Ed Johnnet.
Yeah. So nice. All right. Well, chock full of personnel, household names to come, I would imagine.
Hopefully, yeah.
Can I just go back, if you don't mind, and give listeners a taste of track two? Only because you knew I had to go there, John. This has some strong Bill of Bounty vibes. This is Lonely Day in Paradise, a slow halftime shuffle.
Yeah, that was one that's kind of funny because when Dane first played it for me on acoustic guitar, I couldn't quite piece it together in my head. It felt like really long. It probably wasn't, but I felt like, okay, it's not getting to where it needs to quickly enough. And we talked through the possibility of changing things around. And I took what he had intended to be the chorus and just made it the bridge. So it only occurs the one time. And then the chorus becomes the refrain of Just Another Lonely Day in Paradise. And so we built that out. And I don't think, I'm not sure if either of us were sure at the outset whether that was going to work out as well as it did. But when I listen to it now, I really love it. So it actually grew on me to be possibly my favorite on the record.
Yeah, me too. And this is where I have to just mention, I've got to throw out a few accolades here for the co-producer here, but a lot of natural talent, with no doubt. But some of these things, like that John just happened to mention, that takes a lot of training too. And I was actually kind of blown away when I found out that he was a graduate of the Berklee School of Music. Now, I've known people in my life that have attended, some fabulous musicians. The drummer that played on a couple cuts on my album, What Am I Supposed to Do? And Casablanca, his name is James Andrew Smith, attended Berklee School of Music. And I've known several people that attended, but never met anybody that graduated. And that's a lot of amazing training coupled with that natural talent. I got the benefit of that. And I was very happy about that. Still thrilled about it.
It was one of those things that also worked out well because of the fact that I have a process that I've developed through Page 99 where I don't try to be a control freak, but eventually it all has to funnel back through my process, whatever we do. And Dane, on the other hand, when he was writing these songs, it was a lot of acoustic guitar and vocal, and he would sort of cast a vision of the song vocally to me and just say, I want it to sound like this. I'm thinking of a feel like this. And then he would kind of just let me go, but I understood what he was asking for. And we rarely had any push and pull back and forth. You were able to articulate in broad terms, and it just worked perfectly into my process. So who
That's true. And again, and sorry, Tom, to interrupt, but along those same lines, though, there were songs that I actually didn't have that vision, but when I would play it on the acoustic, John came up with the vision, and case in point is "Own This Heartache." That's a good example of one of those songs that I just sat down and wrote the song on the acoustic guitar. Didn't really have a vision for the production, but John heard it right away and articulated that in the tracks.
What's amazing to me about that song, because I was just going to bring it up next. You mentioned "What Am I Supposed to Do Now" from the first record, right? And you tell this funny story. I don't know if it was that track, but your first album has a number of different sounds, which we've gone over. One of which is almost like this Eagles-esque country twang infused with yacht rock. And John must have seen that in this song, because that's what I hear in "Own This Heartache." It could be, the Eagles singing the backup vocals here. And
right.
Let's play a little, some of these big harmonies in this tune. So that's why I would tell listeners, like, this does feel like the follow-up to Dane Donohue, the debut. It doesn't feel like it's 40 years removed.
It does. And another thing too that jumps out is one of the things that really bothered me when I was recording my first album, because you get hammered on by record executives. I guess Bruno Mars sort of went through the same thing when he was saying, well, your album doesn't really have a direction. It has all these eclectic pieces, and you got a country song, a jazz song, this song, that song. And actually, the second album started going that same direction, which I'm thinking, well, wait a second here. I don't know if this is a good idea. And John was quick to point out, wait a second. No, that's exactly what your first album did. So you can record Let It Go, and you can do Lonely Day in Paradise, and you can do Own This Heartache.
But that's
You know,
you,
so,
Dane. I mean,
yeah,
you're a
exactly.
jazz influenced strum rocker, which is like that's my dream come true. That's exactly what I love. John knows. If I'm not talking about yacht rock, what genre am I talking about, John?
Alt country
Yes,
for
Yeah.
sir.
American win. Yeah.
Yes,
You know,
sir.
it's also true that the album, even though it has these diverse influences, when you listen to it as a whole, which I always tell people to do, whether it's this album or any other album, take the time to listen. The flow of this one, and we didn't put a lot of thought into it. We just kind of knew that there were a couple songs that had to be here, another one had to be there, and then from there on, we just articulated out the rest of them. And when you listen to it, it flows almost like a concept record. It just, the next song is just the right feel to follow the previous.
Right, right.
Well, I'm thinking back to the first time I listened to the original Dane Donohue record. I don't think it jumped off at me that I'm listening to all these different genres at once. I just heard a complete album that was very interesting. And it wasn't until about the 10th or 11th listen where I'm like, oh, this one's a little jazzy, or Tracy's really kind of funky, or this other one's got some Eagles twang to it. So it comes across as one piece. The same thing with this record. It comes across with one piece, but you can take the parts and separate them and say, well, that's a red Lego and that's a yellow Lego.
Yeah,
But
I mean, Prince was pretty successful doing that on his records. Look at those early Chicago records, you know, and they sold a few of those, I think.
who's this? The Prince?
Chicago and Prince.
Oh, I've never heard of them.
Yeah.
Sounds good. All right. I wanted to, if you will oblige me, go through another track here that I got to decide which one I want to ask you about first. I'll ask you about Fair Enough because I think I brought this up the first time I heard the lyrics to this. And if you know the full story, like I can't listen to this, Dane, without getting a little teary eyed because the do the flowers still grow on the outside? That whole part.
That line.
So
Yeah.
good. Oh, just it's killer. So how much of do you want to tell us about what that song is about or what inspired it?
Well, what inspired the song basically is, you know, I'm all right here as long as I know you're okay there. You know, that's pretty much the long and the short of it. I know it's very confusing. It's even confusing to me. And a lot of people hear the song and they say, not only the mixture of, you know, you're doing like a folk song 1 minute and then you're in a full blown country chorus, you know, but they say, well, what are you talking about here? But basically, that's what it is. I'm okay right here as long as I know you're going to be okay there.
And I think that's what stirs the emotion because it's a very selfless expression of because the name of the song's Fair Enough. It's like I'll accept where I'm at as long as you're okay.
You're
And
okay.
it's powerful. Good stuff.
Yeah, and the lyrics on the verses feel very abstract, at least as how they connect to the chorus. And that makes it feel like I always got this feeling, it's strange to say, like I was looking at a Monet painting while I was listening to this song.
Oh,
You know what I mean? It's like you can kind of see the things, but that they're all a little bit, they're more artistic than you're used to. So maybe that's supposed to be a kid walking in a park, but maybe it's, you know what I mean? It's just like I didn't need to know exactly. It said the right things without me having to know, oh, I need to know exactly what that first line means. You
so
know?
you're not troubled by a little bit of abstract, in other
No,
words.
not at all.
No,
I'm
no,
intrigued by it. It makes me think on it more and makes me want to listen to it more.
Because
exactly.
I got a little paranoid about it. I was going to suggest, well, wait, instead of L.A. Rainbow, maybe we should call this album the Second Arrangement. But I thought, well, no, I better hold off on that. I don't want to get John upset,
Yeah. So many
Or
like
Donald for that matter.
Yeah, right. Yeah, there's enough going on with second arrangement to
Yeah,
not play with
exactly.
fire over there.
Right. Don't want to play with fire.
When you came in, you tracked some of the vocals here in a studio in Metro Detroit. So I was lucky enough to pop in, and I think I told the listeners last time when we had you on is that I walked into the studio and John was listening to some of the playbacks, and I felt like I was transported in time and place to LA in 1978, 79, and I got chills. And one of them was the song that you were working through, John. It was called Going Down, which is
Right.
just this beautiful mid-tempo ballad. Um, it who is that? Did we mention the saxophonist that you have on this track?
Yeah, I mentioned that was Ed Jonnet.
That jumping Ed.
Jumping Ed Jonnet.
Gosh, yeah. Awesome work. And him on Chinatown as well.
Yes.
Yes, on Chinatown. Yes.
Yeah. And so for both of those songs, really, that's the classic Dane Donohue technique of there's where you go between falsetto and chest voice is very fluidly, which I know is not easy. Um, has that gotten more challenging over the years and 44 years of not doing it professionally?
Well, it always does as you get a little bit older anyway. It's a little more difficult. But the inspiration of us doing this thing in Detroit is very inspirational for me because you got to remember at that time, while we were doing those tracks, I believe we were doing a little charity bit for Silver Bells.
Yes.
And that sort of set the tone for me anyway of like, wow, this is pretty serious stuff. And the engineer Carlos that you had in there, and it was just a very very right setting to get this thing kicked off. And so I felt good about it, and John knew exactly what he was looking for vocally, and we got it luckily very quickly.
Yeah, it was our first time to actually meet face to face and a working thing. We had met down in Dayton, but
Yeah,
to actually work together, and so you never know how that's going to
right.
go.
Mm-hmm.
But it also gave you an understanding, like you just said, of what I was looking for, which then allowed you to, on some of the other tracks, cut some vocals at a studio there in Ohio, as opposed to
Right.
having to come up every single time. But it took that first time to really say, okay, now I get what you're after and how this is going to go. And do you want to give some credit to your engineer up in Ohio there?
Yeah, we're working with an engineer up here named Randy Buzz Kilgore.
All his guys have nicknames, man.
They do nicknames, and
Are they all in the
he's
mafia?
no, he's a real big guy, but he's got this little attack dog that's about what weighs about 4 pounds. Gizmo is the dog's
Oh
name,
my gosh, I
but he
love that.
always squares off with us, and I call him Cujo. You know? But yeah, Randy, he does a great job. He keeps everything very, very simple, no effects. He doesn't try to get fancy, do any auto tune, anything. He sends it just flat, just the way it comes out to John, which is the way John wants to have it. And so that situation worked out real well too.
Yep.
That is sometimes the trap that modern artists fall into when they're trying to do this genre. There's all these tricks now available to them, and it's hard to resist. Well, maybe let's throw a little auto tune in, and then but as soon as you do, John, it takes away the vibe of the authenticity, And I know there's certain things that you're using that didn't exist back then, but like
Correct.
you had to resist those urges, especially when you're doing a Dane Donohue record.
Oh yeah, and quantization and beat alignment and all of those things that you could use, but it's not like any one of them is the issue. It's when you start using a lot of this stuff, then your record sounds like a 2020s record imitating 1978. It doesn't sound like a 1978 record, and that's a big thing.
Yep.
They go overboard, basically.
Yep.
With the effects, and it always backfires.
Real quick, going back to Carlos, the engineer in Metro Detroit here, didn't he like work on projects with Ray Parker Jr. and Quincy, even Four Tops, that sort of thing?
Stevie Wonder, yeah.
Stevie Wonder, yeah.
He's got all kinds of stuff on the wall. Yeah.
There is some cred on this record. It might
No,
not
I'm
be
glad
LA.
I'm glad I didn't know that at the
Yeah.
time. But
That count as
but,
personnel for us because their pictures were on the wall.
yeah,
right.
yeah. He just he fell right into it. He was really into the session, and I thought, well, this is making things really easy.
Yeah.
John, what was the biggest challenge for you? So maybe this didn't dawn on you at the time, but if I'm lying awake at 11 o'clock at night staring at the ceiling, I'm like, holy crap, this is going to be on me. There's going to be a Dane Donohue record. The whole world's going to hear it. And it better work or it's on me. From a sound standpoint, anyway.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't have that feeling as much as Dane likes a lot of vocals on his records, a lot of layers and a lot of parts. And he probably knows that even his own vocal is, as you talk about, when you're going back and forth from falsetto to chest voice, it's a challenging thing to then mix because of the level fluctuations. So it's the vocals that were the big deal for me because dealing with vocals, there's getting that mix right and not getting it just right it's a very fine margin. And it makes such a huge difference because that's what everybody's listening to. And I also get this feeling sometimes when you're working on it for a long time with a lot of vocals in a track, I start to get vocal fatigue in my ears. And that's from me listening. So I have to try to separate that from how is this going to affect somebody listening to it for the first time, or just it comes up on Spotify for them. They're not drilling down on it all day long. So the vocal thing is always a challenge to me. It's true for Page 99 too.
Yeah. Hey, what about you? What was the biggest challenge for you taking on this project that, like we said, was 44 years in the making? Was it just inertia? Was it fear of, I don't know, failure? Was it coming up with the material? What was the challenge for you?
Oh, I know the answer to that. It was waiting for the release after it was done. He couldn't. He was chomping at the bit.
So was I. So,
Yeah, actually, there was only one. None of the above. The only real challenge that I had was I knew that with all the training and the natural talent that John pulled together, that these guys were every bit as superstars as the people on the first album, as far as their talent goes. But was I going to be able to pull off the vocals like I did? That was my challenge. Am I going to be able to do these vocals? I knew the songs were there. I thought the songs, if they were produced right with the right kind of players, would hold up to that first bar of the first album. But can I do 46 years later? Can I hit the notes I need to be hitting on these songs?
Yeah, we're coming out on the back end of COVID where everybody's got a little bit of respiratory distress. You know? So,
yeah.
Well, you did. You nailed it. I'll tell you that and tell the listeners that. The material definitely is there. I'm really impressed with it. But I told you before, I just love the way you write songs. I love your approach, the structures. It's not always the predictable verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, out. So you never know what's coming next. And
Thank you.
I just don't know if my problem is I don't know if I could pick a favorite song. I'm looking at these. I'm like, God, they're all my favorite. What about
praise.
Yeah. I've lost my train of thought. So John, I'll ask you. Oh, no, I was going to ask you, Dane. So I know that you've recorded at least once, maybe multiple times since then. When you went into this project, you had a high bar. You mentioned the high bar for the first one. You had a high bar. Do you feel like the project achieved what you wanted it to do?
Yes, it did. And I've recorded not a whole lot since then, but I have recorded mostly in a home studio. But, it was just basically to hear what, the songs could come close to what they were sounding like in my head. I knew I could never achieve, the sound quality and, the musicianship on the first album until I met John. But yeah, it's there. It's there.
It's amazing. And this has been, like I said, quite a story. Even if you take the two knuckleheads with the Yacht Rock podcast out of the story, it's still an amazing story. And again, we'll link to the prior interviews in the show notes. But the way this album, whose decision was this? The way the album opens is like perfect. It's like a soundtrack to a movie. It's like, here's part two. Why don't we play it for people? This is the lead into High Life Dream. That orchestral thing. How did that happen? Why did it happen?
It happened while we were juggling around the opening track. It was either going to be LA Rainbow or High Life Dream. And then when we decided on High Life Dream, I always had this thing nagging at me before I put that orchestra on there, that it just started with these two drum hits and then go. And it just felt like almost like what Steely Dan said about what was the tune that Larry Carlton had to put the intro on from Royal Scam, whatever it was. They felt like it just starts out of nowhere, which of course every song does, but it always felt weird and naked to me at the beginning. So I don't know where the idea specifically to do the orchestration came from, but I was sitting playing through some new sounds on a keyboard and had been working on this song, and I just started going through the chord progression, on different sounds, and I came across this string sound, and it gave me this idea, well, what if I do sort of like the beginning of Sailing, a little orchestral thing that leads in. So ours wasn't an accident, theirs was, but
yeah.
So yeah, it just kind of came out of, I need something to build into this intro because it just feels a little wah wah when it just goes doo doom, you know?
Yep.
Right.
It,
You nailed it, man. You did. It was great. I mean, in the old days when they used to do the 2-minute singles, it
Oh
was
yeah,
one thing.
it cut.
But in today's world,
Yeah.
today's world, I think it works out perfectly.
yeah.
I
And
really do.
it sets the head right. It kind of, like I said, it makes you feel like you're in this movie and you're now just sitting down and the theater's going dark and all right, I'm ready for the sequel. This is gonna be awesome.
Yeah,
And
and what's
it
coming is important, and it
what's
gives it a sense of gravitas.
yes, and it delivers, man. I'm telling you, people are gonna love this record. John, forgive me, but this might be the best modern yacht album of 2024. I know you released one for Page 99 too, but
Yeah, but mine's not nearly as yachty as this. This is
true.
definitely yachty.
Well,
Yeah.
okay, then I don't feel so bad.
No, no, no.
Dave, where do you go from here? What do you do for an encore? Encore? Are you going to keep going?
Well, yeah, we've talked about that already, and we've already got a couple songs ready to go. Trying to give John a little bit of a break here until we get the thing. But the first time I just casually mentioned it, that had a couple songs just waiting in the wings that I wish we could have gotten to record that I think would be great, either to do another album or to maybe switch around and do some bonus tracks.
Yeah,
The
deluxe edition.
Yeah, deluxe edition with bonus tracks. Additional bonus tracks other than one of my favorites, Sunrise on the Water.
Yes.
So excited about it. I'd like to absolutely. I got the buzz going now, so I'd like to keep it going as long as John's willing.
Yep.
So
Yep. Awesome. Well, through the miracle of podcasting, you mentioned that the album will be out in a couple weeks or so. It's actually dropping last night because today is officially the 5th of September when people are going to be hearing this. So the album is out. It's available, obviously streaming everywhere. Where do we get our hands on any physical media?
That P-Vine Records is handling the CD releases. We're hoping to have potentially vinyl down the road, so that is in the works in the background. And but P-Vine, they get their stuff into a lot of the online stores that'll ship worldwide. CD Japan, Tower Records are two of the most reputable ones, and they will ship worldwide.
Do you
recall? It's not that expensive.
Yeah, Dane, do you recall if the first album did very well in Japan, like a lot of the yacht rock stuff did?
Well, I'm sure that over time, I remember years ago in Capitol Studios, we were recording. I think we were working on Dance with a Stranger, and Larry Carlton said, "You'll sell well in Japan." And I said, "Well, how do you know that?" He says, "Because I sell there." And I said, he said, so that was my first introduction to, like I said, if it would have been a hit over here, it would have probably been much bigger in Japan at the time. But this thing took a long time. At first there was hardly any sales and didn't have things like streaming or anything like that. But now it's doing 100,000 some streams a month on Spotify alone.
Yeah, I remember when we had you on last time, you had just joined the Million Stream Club with Casablanca, and now that is up to more than 2.5 million.
Yeah.
Empty Scenes approaching 1.5 million. Woman is over 1 million. So I got to imagine whether they're in Japan or wherever they live, they have discovered the genius that is Dane. And so hopefully people will be out there and gobble this thing up. It's so worth it. I can't praise it highly enough, honestly. I love it.
Great. Thank you so much. Well, a lot of work went into it, and a lot of great again, just like the first album. The second album had some fantastic over the top talent that worked really hard.
Yep. But no politics. No politics this time, though, right?
No, actually, no.
Yeah,
no,
so that's good. Awesome. All right, well, Dane, this is great. Keep writing, keep recording, keep releasing, keep coming back to the podcast. Well, you're welcome.
I can't thank you guys enough. I mean, seriously, I'll say what I said at the beginning of the podcast. This is where it all started.
Yeah,
and this is what got the second launch going on. And so I'm excited, and we'll just see what happens. Thank you so much, both of you.
the serendipity is amazing, and we have to thank Keith Berry because he did his part to hooking us up too.
Absolutely, man.
And thank
Oh,
him for doing his story because that's,
yeah.
I mean, we knew who you were, but we didn't know that we would have access to hear you tell your story yourself. And then look what it's led to. So great job. Awesome work, guys.
Yep.
All right. I'm off to go listen to it again.
Thank you, guys.
Check you out. Check you later. Ahoy polloi.
Cool.
I was going to ask this. I think it's obvious, so that's why I didn't ask it. Is LA Rainbow the idea of where you started and kind of where you've become? Is that what the LA Rainbow?
No, the LA Rainbow song was when I first I was so excited when I first went to LA because of the disaster that happened in San Francisco. And when I met Terrence Boylan, Boona Boylan, my management set me up, if you can believe it, they got me a suite at the Chateau Marmont Hotel in West Hollywood. And so I'm in there, and SIR Studios had brought over a Fender Rhodes, a bass guitar, and an amp. I had my acoustic guitar there. And David Catrou, who had co-written Casablanca and a lot of the songs on the album, was with me. And early in the morning, he would stay up half the night. I'd go to bed early, but I could hear him like way up in the front on the piano. And he was always playing Somewhere Over the Rainbow from The Wizard of Oz. He always played that. And I somehow, equated that, not with today's rainbow terms, but with so many people try to make it to LA and get over that rainbow, And so, I mean, the Rainbow Bar and Grill has, they always, so LA and the rainbow, and it's just people going out west and trying to make it. It's a difficult thing.
Yeah.
And so that's basically where that idea came from.
Cool. And now we have bonus content for the YouTube channel. So there you go. Always got to stick around and watch the video version because there's always one last thing. I'm kind of like Columbo.
Yeah.
One last thing, man. All right. Cool, Dane. Well, good luck. I hope it does awesome. Keep us posted.
Thank you.